Now let's start talking about some of the most important aspects of the NAPALM Ansible modules. And I think these are the configuration features that NAPALM Ansible provides for you. NAPALM Ansible has a set of very good configuration abstractions, and let's look at how we can start to use these. So here I have a playbook called napalm_merge.yml. And let me go ahead and simplify it. So we're going to operate this on PyNet Switch 5. We're using the napalm install config module. We're using our provider specified in group vars. Now notice I'm going to load a config file. Where's the config file being loaded from? It's being loaded from the configs directory inventory hostname, so in this case pynet-switch5-merge.txt. So if I look at that file, all I'm doing is making this logging buffer change. Now, let's look at a couple of other arguments. Commit changes, I'm going to set that to false, so we're not going to commit the changes. We are not doing a replace config operation. Remember, napalm has two main operations, a merge and a replace. So with replace set to false, it's going to be doing a merge operation. So we're changing some subsection of the config. And then I'm going to specify a diff file, and it's going to create the diff file in the diffs subfolder in the inventory hostname.txt file. So if I go into diffs, I'm going to go ahead and remove all these text files. Go ahead and look at our playbook one more time. So at a high level, what we're going to do here is we're going to stage the changes specified here in the candidate config. We are going to generate a diff based on those changes that's going to be saved here, and we are not going to commit our changes, and we're performing a merge operation. So go ahead and execute that. Here it's operating on napalm install config. Generates our diffs. We look at our diff and we can see that it's going to add this one line to the config. The logging buffered 50,000. So if I go in here and I say my commit changes is true, I'll first do a napalm grep logging on this Arista 5 switch, just to look at how logging is currently configured before I run the playbook. Nothing there. Now we'll go ahead and run our playbook. Go ahead and load those changes in. Rerun our netmiko grep. Look at the current logging config. We now see it is configured to 50,000. Once again, if we look at our diff, it changed that. Now if I rerun the playbook at this point in time, there should be no changes. We should come back that this is idempotent. It recognizes that it's already entirely correct, and the diff file should come back as empty. So there is a file, but it's completely empty. Now, if we expand upon this and do more devices than the original single device, now let's look at the changes that we're going to be making here. So PyNet router 1, Juniper, which is the SRX one, and NXOS one. And let me just change that to SRX1. So then if we look at our configs, we're going to see that we have the change that we made for this switch, the change that we make for this one router. We're changing the logging buffer, the change that we make for this SRX. Now notice I'm actually changing something slightly different. Syslog archive size to 240K. Notice I'm using the Juniper conf style format for that. And then the last one that we're going to be making is for the NXOS1. I'm changing the logging history size to 400. If I go back in here, I'm going to toggle this back to be commit changes false. Go ahead and execute my playbook. Gathering facts, doing the NAPALM install config. So NXOS1 is already entirely correct. PyNet switch 5 is already entirely correct. But SRX1 and hopefully PyNet router 1, they both have a change that need to be made. If we go into our diffs directory, we see the two files have 0 size changes, but SRX1 has a change it's going to make, so archive size is being changed from that to that. And PyNet router 1, we're going to be making this logging buffer change. So if I go back here, I specify the merge. Well, I specify that I'm going to commit my changes. Go ahead and re-execute my playbook and commit those changes into the device. Now remember here, there's some nice aspects to this. So we're staging the configs in a candidate config kind of way. We're generating the diffs beforehand. We're able to verify the diffs. We're then able to commit our changes onto the box, and we could potentially roll back if we needed to. The other nice thing about this is we're making configuration changes across 4 platforms, and we didn't have to do different plays in order to accomplish this, and we didn't have to do conditionals in order to accomplish this. So behind the scenes, this is using NX API, Arista eAPI, netconf, and an SSH channel to accomplish what's going on here, but we have a uniform interface and we have a single task in our playbook in order to accomplish the merge operation. Now if we go in here and we rerun our playbook a second time, hopefully we're going to see at this point that our 4 devices are all configured properly and they all come back as being in the OK state, which they do. If we look at our diffs, we now see that all our diffs are reported as being 0 size. Now let's go ahead and look at a second example of this. So here I'm going to configure a set of VLANs. My file I'm going to use is going to basically be the platform name -VLANs, and I'm going to do this for Arista and NXOS. Once again, I'm going to generate a diff file. I'll toggle the commit changes to false. And let's look at my EOS VLANs. I'm going to configure those 5 VLANs. And let's look at my NXOS VLANs. I'm going to configure the same 5 VLANs for NXOS. Go ahead and run my playbook. And I'm actually operating on all 4 Arista switches and the 2 NXOS switches. Okay, so we'll look at my diffs. So let's look at one of the 2 Arista. So it's going to be adding those, and let's look at one of the, so this is one of the 2 NXOS switches, and here I'll look at one of the 4 Arista switches. So here we see we're going to be adding those 4 Arista switches. Go ahead and toggle my playbook to commit my changes. Re-execute it. While that's executing, I'll go over here. I'll do netmiko show VLAN, and we'll do this on PyNet switch 8. Wait for this to complete. Okay, it's installed the config. It's working on the last Nexus. So I'll run that on PyNet switch 8 and see what I get back. You can see I have those 5 VLANs configured. And let's do that for NXOS 1. There's a bunch of other VLANs that already exist, but we can see our VLAN 300 through 304 were configured. If I rerun this playbook again, hopefully we see that it's idempotent. It recognizes that all of the config already exists properly. Go into our diffs directory, and then here we see the ones that were just generated. We see that there were no differences. Everything is exactly what it should be. So here we're using the NAPALM config operations in conjunction with Ansible to do a merge operation. In the next section, I'll start talking about doing a NAPALM replace operation for config changes where we replace the entire configuration of a device.